Freshman year at college was supposed to be exciting: new people, new places, a fresh start. I was at a small liberal arts school, tucked away in a quiet town surrounded by dense woods. I'd been assigned a double room in an old dorm, one of those creaky brick buildings that had been around since the 1900s. My roommate, Kyle, showed up a day late. He was a wiry guy with messy hair and a nervous energy that put me on edge from the start. I introduced myself, tried to chat, but he just muttered his name and started unpacking in silence. I figured he was shy, maybe he'd warm up. He didn't. The first few days were uneventful. I'd leave for class, come back, and Kyle would be there, always in the same spot, sitting cross-legged on his bed, hunched over his laptop with headphones on. He barely spoke, just nodded, or gave one-word answers if I asked anything. It was awkward, but I could deal with it. Then things started getting weird. One night, I woke up to a faint scratching sound. It was around 2 a.m., and the room was pitch black, except for the sliver of light from the street lamp sneaking through the blinds. I lay still, trying to place it. The noise was coming from Kyle's side of the room. I squinted through the dark and saw him sitting on the edge of his bed, facing me. His hands were moving, scratching at something in his lap, a notebook. Maybe? I couldn't tell. "Kyle?" I said, my voice groggy. He froze, then whispered, "Go back to sleep," before lying down. I didn't push it, but I couldn't shake the feeling of his eyes on me in the dark. The next day, I brushed it off as a one-time thing. I had a full schedule, made some friends on my floor, and even started to feel like I was settling in. That night, though, I came back late from hanging out in the common room. Kyle was still up, same position, same laptop glow. I said, "Hey," got no response, and went to bed. Hours later, I jolted awake again, this time to silence. No scratching, no noise, just an oppressive stillness. I glanced over, and Kyle wasn't in his bed. His laptop was closed. His shoes were gone. I figured he'd stepped out, maybe to the bathroom. But then, I noticed something. My desk drawer, the one I kept my snacks and spare cash in, was slightly ajar. I hadn't left it like that. I got up, checked it, nothing was missing, but everything felt shifted, like someone had rifled through it and tried to put it back. I looked around the room. Kyle's stuff was untouched, neat as always. I locked the door, something I hadn't bothered with before, and went back to bed, chalking it up to paranoia. He still wasn't back when I fell asleep. The next morning, Kyle was there again, acting like nothing had happened. I asked if he'd gone out last night. He shrugged and said, "Couldn't sleep." That was it. I didn't press him, but I started locking my drawer too. That weekend, I went to a campus event, some outdoor movie night, and got back around midnight. The room was dark, but I could hear Kyle breathing, slow and steady, like he was asleep. I flicked on my desk lamp to grab my charger, and that's when I saw it. A smudge of dirt on the floor near my bed. Not a lot, just a faint trail leading from the door. I hadn't tracked it and my shoes were clean. I looked at Kyle's side. His sneakers, caked with mud, sat by his bed. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, I decided to confront him. "Hey Kyle, were you outside last night?" He didn't look up from his laptop. "No," he said flatly. "Your shoes are dirty," I pointed out. He paused, then said, "Must have been from earlier." It didn't add up. He hadn't left the room all day before I'd gone out. I let it go, but I started spending less time in the room. My friends noticed I was on edge, and I told them about Kyle, how he was weird, how stuff felt off. They laughed it off, said I was stuck with a dud roommate. I wished it was that simple. A week later, I came back from the library late. The hall was quiet, lights dimmed for the night. As I turned the key in our door, I heard a faint click, like metal on metal, coming from inside. I pushed the door open slowly. Kyle wasn't there. His bed was empty, laptop off. The window was cracked open, letting in a cold breeze. I stepped in, and my foot brushed something on the floor, a small pocket knife, blade out, lying under my bed. I picked it up, heart pounding. It wasn't mine. I'd never seen Kyle with it either. I threw it in my drawer, locked it, and sat on my bed, waiting. Kyle stumbled in an hour later, reeking of damp earth and sweat. He didn't say anything, just climbed into bed. I blurted out, "Where were you?" He muttered, "Walk," and pulled the blanket over his head. I didn't buy it. The knife, the dirt, the scratching, it was too much. The next day, I requested a room change. The RA said it'd take a few days to process, so I crashed on a friend's floor in the meantime. I didn't tell Kyle I was moving, just grabbed my essentials and left. 2 nights later, I got a text from my friend on the same floor. "Dude, your roommate's freaking out. He's been knocking on doors asking where you are." I didn't respond. The room change went through the next day, and I moved into a single on the other side of the building. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. A few nights into my new room, I woke up to a soft tapping. It was faint, like fingernails on wood, coming from the door. I froze listening. It stopped after a minute. I checked the peephole, nothing but an empty hallway. I told myself it was a fluke, maybe someone drunk stumbling around. But the next night, it happened again, louder this time, more insistent. I didn't open the door. I called campus security instead. They showed up, checked the hall, found nothing. Probably a prank, they said. I didn't believe them. The third night, I stayed up, lights off, watching the door. Around 3 a.m., the tapping started slow, deliberate. I crept to the peephole. There was Kyle, standing there, head down, hands in his pockets. He didn't knock again, just stood there for what felt like forever before walking away. I reported it the next morning. The RA said Kyle had been asking about me, claiming I'd taken something of his. I hadn't. They moved him to a different dorm after that, and I never saw him on campus again. I heard later he dropped out mid-semester. No one knew why. I kept that knife in my drawer until I graduated, a reminder of how close I'd come to something. I still don't fully understand. The woods around campus always felt darker after that, like they were hiding whatever Kyle had been up to out there. I never found out what it was, and honestly, I'm glad I didn't.